Unique watches usually come with financial advice, and affordable ones, about as original as a photocopy of a photocopy. But it doesn't have to be that grim. Here's a lineup of budget-friendly watches under £300 that are so weird, wonderful and willfully off-piste, you'll either hopelessly fall in love or recoil like they just licked your face. Marloe is one of those microbrands that makes affordable feel like a relative term. Like when someone says they've bought a modest townhouse and it turns out to have a wine cellar and a cinema room. Their watches are beautifully built, draped in British charm and just eccentric enough to feel deliberate rather than deranged. Normally, they sit just out of reach for those of us who still mentally convert prices into how many Tesco meal deals we could get instead. But when Marloe has a sale, it's not the usual half-hearted tenner off to cover postage. No, this is an actual, grown-up, go on then, maybe I do deserve nice things kind of sale. The sort where a watch looks like it belongs on the wrist of a boutique yacht designer somehow lands in your lap for the price of a mid-range Timex. It's rare, it's dangerous, and it might just be how your collection accidentally levels up. The Solent Timer Rescue is one of those watches. Nautical by nature, dressed head to toe in the international colour of emergency and inspired by the unsung heroes of the coast. And as someone who once got mildly sunburnt day drinking at a beachside bar in Cornwall and described it as a near-death experience, I feel a deep personal connection to it. Now, while it's undeniably nautical, with 100 metres of water resistance and a name that practically screams lifeboat chic, the Solent Timer Rescue isn't a dive watch. But crucially, it isn't pretending to be one either. There's no dive bezel cosplay or depth rating manhood swinging contest. It's got polish, literally and figuratively. More yacht club than yacht deck. More champagne on the shore than compressor bevel in a coral reef. But don't mistake that shine for snobbery. This isn't some delicate dress piece wilting under the pressure of its own cufflinks. There's bite here. Character, presence. A fully polished 42mm stainless steel case with a 48mm lug-to-lug and a just right 12mm thickness. Lean enough for comfort, chunky enough to mean business. Topped with a sapphire crystal, AR coated on both sides no less, and a display case back that reveals the always hungry Miyota 9039 high beat movement beating away inside at its 28,800 vibrations per hour. Peer through the transparent caseback and you'll spot a quote from US President Franklin D. Roosevelt circling the chapter ring, "A smooth sea never made a skilled sailor," which is fitting considering I could probably drown trying to rescue a rubber duck from a half-filled bath. But it's a lovely touch, and in the obsessive world of watches, lovely touches are the entire point. The dial, though, is where the action is. A stark striped white base nodding to the hazard striping of coastal emergency crews, while a bold inner orange rotating chapter ring brings the whole concept to life. It's part watch, part high fashion distress signal. The strap options are like ordering a Whopper at Burger King. You can have it your way. Stainless steel, Milanese mesh, every flavour of leather imaginable, or, my pick of the bunch, a bright orange silicone number that completes the look with just enough absurdity to remind people you're not about to take this too seriously. And all this for a sale price of under £300. A steal so good you might feel the need to radio it in. But don't expect a rescue team. At this price, you're the one doing the saving. I feel like doing the saving, so much so that I have this watch on its way to me right now. With a name like a once great printer manufacturer, or the sort of cloud-based accounting software your dad installs by mistake, Xeric really set themselves up for life on hard mode. It's not a miscalculation, it's a warning. Like they actively wanted to repel customers unless the product was so good it bordered on a Hollywood redemption story. And oh boy, are they good. Zerich doesn't do polite homage reissues or safe little divers wrapped in faux nostalgia. They build watches like no one told them how watches are supposed to work. Dials with orbiting hours, wandering minutes, mechanical absurdity, equal parts ancient complication and futuristic over-engineering. Every release looks like it escaped from a prototype drawer marked too ambitious, and yet the quality impeccable, over and over again. They shouldn't be able to pull this off, and yet here we are, me eating my words, you probably googling their latest offerings, and Xeric still sounding like a tax software plugin and somehow still winning. Take the new Retroscope jump power, a 39mm stainless steel watch with a neat 44mm lug-to-lug and 14mm thick. It comes with a sapphire crystal, a silicone strap and rated to 50 metres water resistance. All very normal, but the specs only tell half the story. Powered by a Miyota quartz movement, modified and hacked to include a jump hour with retrograde minutes complication, which, translated into normal human terms, means it tells the time like a broken robot trying to fix itself. The hours don't rotate, they snap. The minutes sweep, then panic, and start again. At a glance, it barely registers as a watch. There's only one hand, no markers, just a dial laid out like it was assembled by a dial designer who had applied for a new job as a dial designer, got a new job as a dial designer, but somehow, through a series of calamitous errors, no one thought to check that the only dials he'd ever designed were for speedometers and rev counters. The hour sits in a small window, flicking over once every 60 minutes with a mechanical twitch that looks oddly satisfying, while the single retrograde minute hand glides across the semicircle, hits the limiter and flings itself back to start again, like it's stuck in a very punctual loop of self-destruction. The layout is minimal but calculated. Everything sits with tension, clean lines, sharp contrast and just enough depth to make you stare a little longer than you're meant to. It feels deliberate, but off-centre, like the designer knew the rules but chose to ignore them. This isn't a watch that blends in. You don't glance at it so much as study it, waiting for the moment it moves, like it might do something unexpected, and honestly, it always does. Due for a November release date at only £299, for such a unique piece is already looking like great value, but get in early and you'll be rewarded with a price of just £210. Absolute bargain. But a word of warning, click the link at your peril. Should you do so, don't blame me for every AdSense ad you see for the next year being Xeric. I'm giving away multiple watches every month, exclusively to fully loomed members. You know the deal by now, it's not a cash grab. The money from the membership goes straight into the shipping costs because sadly, Royal Mail still refuses to accept likes as legal tender. As the community grows, so does the opportunity to buy in pricier pieces to review and then give them away. So, if you want the chance to win watches, unlock exclusive content and get early access to the main channel videos, hit that join button or use the link in the description. The giveaway for the San Martin SN0129 is just around the corner. A winner will be drawn and announced on Friday the 7th of August, so now's a great time to get involved. Oh, and we're teetering on the edge of 5,000 subscribers. If you haven't entered that free giveaway yet, the link's down there too. Click before you forget. Right, let's get back to the video. What do you get if you take an eccentric British watchmaker with a proven track record of designing psychotic episodes, pair him with an equally unhinged British artist whose idea of restraint is filling every inch of available space with visual shouting? Hand them a flask of mushroom-laced tea brewed somewhere deep in the woods by a man named Percival and lock them in a room with the instruction, make something sensible. Predictably, an absolute failure in restrained design. You get the kind of collaboration that feels less like a product launch and more like a warning. A watch born not out of market research, but out of mutual creative derangement and contempt for normality. This isn't a design, it's an incident with a crime reference number. A wearable question mark, the result of two men refusing to grow up and refusing to be supervised. And yes, it does tell the time. Probably. Meet the Chaosify, a collaboration between Mr. Jones Watches and Brighton-based illustrator Mr. Phil. The design, pure visual bedlam, but there's logic buried in the madness. The white arrow tells the hours, the floating circle eye gives you the minutes, the twitchy all-seeing eye at the centre spins for the seconds like it's monitoring your every move, and the green elephant sitting in the corner of the room talking to you about the connection you both have. How much of that tea did you actually drink? It's part art piece, part timepiece, Swiss-made quartz movement, sapphire glass, a 37mm black PVD coated stainless steel case, and a soft silicone strap that keeps things comfy while your wrist hosts a riot. Mr. Phil is known for turning doodles into murals, sculptures, vodka bottles, you name it. Mr. Jones is known for turning the way you tell the time on its head. So naturally, this collaboration takes both sides' signature mayhem and shoves it inside the circular confines of a watch dial. And all this originality must cost a fortune, right? Nope. The quartz version is just £195, leaving you enough change for a greasy fry-up to recover from tomorrow morning's inevitable come-down. There is a fancy Solent SW200 automatic available too, which I'd absolutely pick if I had the budget. It's a bargain at £595, but well outside the price range for this list. Space Invaders has been a strangely persistent part of my life. Not because I'm old enough to remember its launch, and not because I'm some retro arcade obsessive with a joystick shrine in the garage. No, it's because my parents were skint in the early 90s. Like any self-respecting child of the console era, I begged for a Sega Mega Drive. They couldn't afford one, but they tried. Maybe a battered and half-working Master System? Not a chance. A ZX Spectrum from the local car boot? Even a slightly haunted Commodore 64. No, I got a Toshiba MSX. They meant well, and I was genuinely grateful. But the only 3 games I ever had were Soccer Boss, some unspeakable karate game, and Space Invaders. So yes, I've played Space Invaders. A lot. Possibly more than NASA. So when Nubio dropped their Space Invaders collab, I was instantly hooked. They spoke to me in a weird, chirpy, 8-bit vocoder voice that I could feel vibrating somewhere between my childhood and unresolved issues. And the Cassini line, each one plastered with an oversized octopus, crab or squid invader. It's absurd, over the top and, annoyingly, incredible. It drags up warm, slightly traumatic memories while also managing to look completely unhinged in the best possible way. The specs are just as loopy, a 50mm lugless slab of steel and 40mm thick, including the sapphire dome, giving off UFO mid-abduction vibes that's holding onto your wrist with a thick neon-coloured silicone strap. A Japanese automatic movement, likely a Miyota 8000 something, because it cost under a £5 to make and nobody's going to be concerned with accuracy with this one. Water resistance, 50 metres. Nothing crazy, but fine for the geek at the retro arcade game convention, nervously sweating while trying to impress the only girl that's ever looked at him. But the real chaos is that dial. Nostalgic pixel carnage, tiny arcade nibbles, and a laser beam seconds hand that's shooting at a mothership counterweight. It's stupid, it's wonderful, it's everything my MSX could never be. And the price? Just £212. So why haven't I picked one up yet? Well, maybe in honour of my parents, I'll wait to find a battered and unloved one at a car boot sale. Or maybe I'll just find another nondescript arcade space themed watch and graciously make do. Indonesian microbrand Lima, in collaboration with Paris-based watch customiser Secunda, have paid tribute to a slightly broken watch worn by a man who'd almost entirely lost his grip on reality, with the Meca Revolt X Youo Brando dive watch. But why a broken watch? And who exactly is it for? Well, Apocalypse Now, for the 3 people left on Earth who haven't seen it, is a Vietnam War film and masterpiece of cinematography. Not a watch film per se, but one that accidentally made 2 timepieces iconic. The Seiko 6105 worn by Captain Willard, a hollowed out Martin Sheen on a one-way boat trip into existential hell. And the Rolex 1675 GMT Master worn by Colonel Kurtz, the rogue officer turned jungle cult leader played by a mumbling, hypnotic, utterly unhinged Marlon Brando. Brando's performance went down in history, not just for its slow burn madness, but for the obsessive detail he brought to it, including his character's watch. The story goes that when production handed him a gleaming Rolex, he simply popped the bezel off. Too polished, too perfect. A man living in the ruins of his own mind would not, he reasoned, wear something so composed. And just like that, a broken Rolex became one of the most memorable watches in cinematic history. But why did Lima choose to honour that specific moment? It's not quite as unhinged as it sounds, at least not by Colonel Kurt's standards, where decapitating deserters and reciting poetry in the dark passes for an average day. Because on the surface, the Meca Revolt X is your standard issue 38mm dive watch, with a 46mm lug-to-lug, just 12mm thick including the boxed and domed sapphire crystal, a skin diver capable 200 metres water resistance and powered by a Miyota 82 S0 automatic hacking movement. Perfectly respectable and perfectly ordinary for an affordable microbrand diver. It has its quirks, like the lightning bolt seconds hand and a crown that looks like it was pinched from a wind-up toy train, but nothing screams cult cinema homage. And yet, hidden in plain sight, is the Apocalypse Now reference. You see, the Meca Revolt X has one trick up its sleeve: interchangeable bezels. And in the few seconds it takes to swap one out, you're left with a bezel-less watch, a Brando moment. And staring up at you during that sacred interval is the engraving, "Put a damn bezel on if you ain't Marlon." With the bezel on, nobody knows it's there, but you do. Your own quiet tribute to the jungle-dwelling, monologue-whispering demigod of chaos himself. Sadly, the Meca Revolt X You Ain't Brando is out of stock for now. But here's hoping they fire up another batch soon, because at around £270, it's not exactly a steal based on specs alone, but watches aren't spreadsheets, they're stories. And this one, it's mad, moody, cinematic, and just about compelling enough to earn its price tag. The Stauer Dashtronic looks less like a watch and more like the scales Marjorie Dawes used to humiliate Carol with in Little Britain's Fat Fighters. You'd half expect it to bark, "Dust, anyone? No?" whenever checking the time. It's got that same energy, bold numbers, retro gauge styling and a weirdly judgy face, like it's about to tell you off for having a bit of chocolate cake or curry. It's meant to look like a 1930s car dash, but it's giving more bathroom shame with extra bling. Two little windows where the hands should be, flicking over like a petrol counter, or a cruel public weighing display at your local community centre. And yet, I love it. It's so strange, so specific, so committed, I can't help but respect it. A jump hour look in a vintage costume, cosplaying as a speedometer while quietly judging your curves. Utterly mad, totally brilliant. Now, dial back your expectations a touch. Stauer isn't some meticulous microbrand clawing for credibility among a sea of perfectly lit Instagram wrist shots. No, Stauer lives in a different world entirely. A world where their watches are modelled by mahogany-tinted presenters on mid-morning shopping channels. Men who once had their big break as a silent extra on the bill, only to blow it by returning from a 2-week hiatus with dazzling turkey teeth, freshly sprouted hair plugs, and the unshakable confidence of someone who's just discovered cologne. What you get is a 39mm stainless steel cushion case, vaguely reminiscent of a Panerai Luminor if you squint and lower your standards. It's 12mm thick, has a very light drizzle-friendly 30m water resistance thanks to the push-pull crown and screwed-on caseback. Screwed on, not screwed in. Let's not get carried away. The crystal is labelled Cotswold, which sounds premium until you realise Cotswold glass is the stuff they used for privacy windows in 1970s bungalow bathrooms. Absolutely useless for a watch display, but it fits the bathroom scales theme, I suppose. Inside, a nondescript Chinese movement doing its best. Now, the movement, Stauer calls it a jumping hour, then immediately clarifies it isn't, which it isn't. Why they bothered making the claim in the first place is beyond me, and frankly, I admire the audacity. and at £199, it's not exactly the value for money piece you'd expect, but just look at it. But honestly, as a weekly prize win for Slimmer of the Week at your local Fat Fighters meetup, it's perfect. If you've ever wanted a watch that looks like it was salvaged from a burnt-out vending machine in a dystopian megacity, BenlyDesign S1000 is here to scratch that very specific itch. It's not just retro-futuristic, it's budget Blade Runner chic. Think Casio meets cyberpunk cosplay with the vague silhouette of a Gerard Perregaux cassette. If the cassette had been reversed engineered by a bloke in a shed who's never actually seen one up close but had very strong opinions about it anyway. The case is metal. Well, metal-ish. And shaped like a brutalist shoebox. At 17mm thick, it's less watch and more blunt force trauma with a temperature reading. Because yes, it tells the time, the date, and the weather inside your sleeve. There's a single button, but practically defunct in everyday use, and instead it uses a tilt-to-weight feature. The LED screen glows just enough to see it light up, then disappears like it's hiding from the authoritarian agents of the state. It's got dual time, a stopwatch, an alarm, and more attitude than most smartwatches, for the price of a Deliveroo and the next morning glued to the toilet. And no, it's not a luxury. It's not refined, but in the sea of identikit fashion watches, the S1000 is gloriously, unapologetically weird. A cheap cassette knockoff? Sure. But it's got charm, the kind of charm that comes with a flickering LED and questionable alloy, and frankly, at under 90 quid, I'd rather have that on my wrist than another wannabe Rolex. Thanks for watching, please like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.